So, how to see the slides, Mr. Ramesh? You will operate, no?
No, sir. It is Professor, sir. Bhupati, sir is.
Oh, professor will operate. Okay. So, I am privileged by the dean himself is now directing the lecture. So, now it is an effective control. If I cannot exceed the time.
Yes, sir. Your cognitive is controlled by.
Who said that? Who said that? Very good. Very well said. I think the lecture is successful.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. In that, just I was trying to locate the papers. Okay. So let us. Professor, we will close this for the time being, this slide, so that I can see your faces. In my screen, this, the slide is visible. Can we close this in my slide?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
How to close it? Okay.
Otherwise, please wait. I can open a different way.
You are able to see me? Now okay. Yes, fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Some kind of proximate feeling that as if I am directly face-to-face interaction. Cognitive economics is face-to-face interaction only now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it says that you have to see the real people and know their real feelings and know what they really want or know why they want what they are wanting. Then go for like so a proxy. Now it is. Thank you, Professor. Now let me resume with your permission. Yeah.
Yes,
See, yes, we were discussing about the theory of mind in Buddhism. There is one, Professor, there is one slide on theory of mind in Buddhism in that. Can you just see? Two pictures will be there. Lastly, two pictures will be there. There is no cognitive lag, but a technological lag on my part. I will improve next time. This one, exactly. So, this I would like to read. Dean, with your permission, let me go ahead, Professor. Okay. So, dear friends, if you see the Buddhist theory of mind and theory of human action, this stanza, this sloka I have taken from Dhammapada. Dhammapada is a great book of the original sayings of Lord Buddha, as the tradition carries it. The original, like in Bible, we have the original words of Lord Jesus printed in red ink in the New Testament. Equivalent to that, the words of the original words uttered by the Lord during his long life of 45 years of preaching, teaching in the banks of Ganges, like in Sravasti and all other great places, Magadha, and all such great places in the 16 Janapathas of the ancient India or enlightened India. So at that time, in various occasions, in the given context, suiting to the occasions, Lord has uttered many such words that verses are being gathered and collected and published as Dhammapada, which means the law of the Dhamma, the way of life, or the law, or the words of the words relating to Dhamma, the doctrine, the law. So in this collection of Dhammapada, the first, it has 25 chapters. They are called Vargas. 26 chapters. In that first chapter, Yamaka Vagga. Yamaka means twins in pairs. This pair is a very, very important thing, and it is actually exactly the methodology of economics. How I will say? By explaining what is Yamaka. Yamaka means telling in parallel terms. Now in economics, if the price increases, the demand for the goods decreases. And if the price decreases, assuming that the goods are not Giffen's goods, the demand for the goods increases. So we have an equation. If A increases, correspondingly B decreases. If A being a causative variable, independent variable that causes that affects the B, a very dependent variable, then if A increases, if A decreases, then B increases. Like that we go for parallel telling. We say something in the positive and in the same thing we say in the negative. I did not steal the goods, therefore I am innocent. The goods were, I am innocent, that is why I did not steal the goods. You see that parallel? Like in economics, I said just now how the increase and decrease and all, we juxtapose between two variables. Similarly, in this Yamaka Varga, the twin phrases, in the twin the verses, the Lord will tell the effect of a particular action. If it is present, what is its effect? If it is not present, what is its effect? If a particular thing is good, what is its effect? If a particular thing is bad, what is its effect? So like in economics, if inflation rate increases, like old Phillips curve, the employment rate will decrease. Like that we are saying, no, same parallel things are the methodology of logical pattern is followed in this. Now let us read this. Mind precedes all knowables. All knowables is called Dhamma in the Pali word. So mind is the forerunner. Before everything that happens, before every action taken by us, before we make an action, take an action, utter a word or see a picture, what takes place in our mind is already a mental picture, a mental idea about how should we speak, whatever we do. Before it manifests, before it is revealed, it is already taken place in the mind. So it has already a rehearsal in the mind, a blueprint in the mind, a mental picture already is formed in the mind, then alone it is manifesting in the external world. Now Karl Marx, when he was telling that what makes the human mind and human being special, the labor of human people is different from the labor of a sparrow, is that even though the sparrow is making the nest so beautifully, it cannot be equated with the not so good looking a small a small net or something manufactured by a human being. Why? In the case of the bird, even though it makes the most beautiful nest, it is not preceded by a mental picture, blueprint, ground plan, architectural plan about that nest in the mind of the bird. It instinctively does it, whereas even the worst form of art of work or any work done by man is preceded by his mental thought, mental picture about it. Yet, the question is, just now I said, 90% of our decisions are done by us unconsciously, and 10% of our time we spend in justifying what unconscious decisions we have taken, or 10% of our time we consciously make decisions. If that is the case, then can it be said that all these 90% decisions which we unconsciously have been taking are also having a mental picture? Yes. The only point is that in some cases you are aware of that mental picture which is going on in your mind. In most of the cases, why you smiled, why you shrugged your shoulder, why you opted this, why you opted that, why you liked a guy, why you divorced a guy, why are you living with him, or you are eating not liking this food, மாமியார் உடைச்சா மண் சட்டி, மருமக உடைச்சா பொன் சட்டி, all that kind of things which are 90% in your mind, which is taking place unconsciously, they are also having a pre-template of mental image, but you are not aware of it. So, what distinguishes the man of creativity, that is why Karl Marx calls the human creativity as labor, that is capable of creating values. Different from that of the sparrow is, your mental state is preceded by by your mind. What is mind? It is capable of creating itself, creating the other, representing what is the other to itself and what itself is to the others, and like that the mind is capable of creating the world. உயர்ந்தோர் மட்டே உலகம். The mind is able to imagine what should be its frame of reference. What should be the valuable people that they should justify me. Now I am commissioner is immaterial to me. Now my mind is longing that as a professor, these 24 or 25 people, will they give me a recognition that yes, I have given a good lecture or not. So the mind is being contextually determined and fluctuating. The mental states are created in the mind by the mind itself. So that's why it is distinct from that of the animal instinct, which is called reptilian brain in the modern neuroeconomics and neurocognitive economics, all that. So Lord Buddha, what is this latest understanding of mind? In the first chapter, in the first verse, it is said, all our mental states are preceded by the mind. And the mind is the chief director of all our emotions, actions, whether it is conscious, unconscious, rational, irrational, stupid, intelligent, super intelligent, whatever, all the sum total of our behavior, the sum total of our moods, the sum total of our intellect, everything is directed by the mind. And what are they? Like the idli is made of rice, cake, rice powder, all our mental states are made of mind itself. Like a golden ring is made of, each particle of the golden ring is made of the gold itself. All our mental states are made of the mind itself. So you see, in the first two stanzas, the entire theory of mind is on par or above the modern scientific understanding of the mind. All our mental states are created by the mind, because mind precedes all that. Mind is the chief architect of and director of all our mental states, and whatever is in us is nothing but it is full of mind or made of mind, and mind itself, mind it. So how does it go? In the Pali Canon, I would like to recite it to you so that it will be a very revealing one to all of us. ठीक है, छोड़ दीजिए, बच्चा कुछ बिस्किट के तोल दीजिए. मनो पुप्पंगमा धम्मा मनो सेट्टा मनोमया मनो पुप्पंगमा धम्मा. Forgive me.
Don't address it.
I have to drink some water because last 2 hours my office bloody. These guys did not even keep your water Saturday being a holiday.
Okay, Prasad. Take your own time.
So I was really not able to drink water. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, Prasad.
So mano puppangamadamma mano setta manomaya mano puppangama. Puppangama, gama means going, puppang means purvam, going before. Mano means mind. The mind is the foregoer, purva gama, purva agami in Sanskrit. Dhamma means the mental states. all nobles in this translation. Mano Setta Manomaya. Mano Srestha. Mano is the chief. The mind is the chief, the leader. Manomaya. எல்லாமே மனோமயமாக இருக்கிறது. All is made of the mind. So if we take this, problem is from my side or your side, Professor?
Yeah, I will check first.
பூபதி சார் மைக் ஆன் ஆகிட்டு இருக்குங்க சார்.
என்னோட மைக்னாலயா?
ஆமாங்க சார், உங்களுக்கு
இந்த வேற பார்ட்டிசிபென்ட் மியூட் பண்ணியாச்சு.
ஓ, வேற பார்ட்டிசிபென்ட். ஓகே. Yeah, go ahead first. Go ahead, sir, please.
So, thank you. So, Mano Puppangamadamma Mano Setta Manomaya Manasache Paduttena Basati Va Karoti Va Tadonang Dukkam Anveti Chakkam Jivavahato Padang Mano Puppangamadamma Mano Setta Manomaya Manasache Pasannena Basati Va Karoti Va Tadonang Sukam Anveti Chaya Iva Anabayini. Ita Sosati Pecha Sosati Papakari Ubayatta Sosati So Sosati So Vihangyati Disvakam Klitamattano Itamodadi Pecha Modadi Kadapunyo Ubayatta Modadi So Modadi So Pamodadi Disvakam Visuddhimattano Ita Tappadi Pecha Tappadi Papakari Ubayatta Tappadi Papang Megadanti Tappadi Piyo Tappadi Dukkadingado Idanandadi Pechanandadi Kadapunyo Ubayatta Nandadi Idanandadi Pechanandadi Kadapunyo Ubayatta Nandadi Pungyame Gadandi Nandadi Piyo Nandadi Suggadingado. These verses I have recited for your, for your appreciation, that the ancient Pali chanting or Pali verses given by our teachers, be it Lord Buddha and the subsequent great philosophers Dignaga, Nagarjuna, Vimalakirti, Dhammakirti, Bodhidharma, they have all adopted different chanting patterns, and they are all sung in the form of songs mostly, or in the pattern of saswaras. So to give that cognitive processes, how they are being affected in us, it is also an unconventional method of presenting to you as to how a theory of mind which is there in Buddhism is practically manifesting. So, in the chanting of these few slokas which I have taken up, I will summarize, and mainly these two slokas in which the crux of the theory of mind is present. In this example of the ox following the wheels of the cart, the wheels of the cart following the ox foot, the hoof, like that, whatever you speak or whatever you do, that will be having an effect. Because like the software determines, the operating software determines the utility and the nature of utility, extent of utility, or the type of utility of the computer. Your mind will determine whether you will use your body for a good purpose or bad purpose, whether you will use your talents, your resources, all that, your knowledge, everything will be determined by the nature of your mind. Therefore, mind is very important. This is the central concept of Buddhism. Now, the implications of, and see, so now if you are speaking goods, that's what I was telling you now, Yamaka, the twin effect. The first effect is what? If you are talking with a corrupted mind, what will be the effect? The sufferings will follow. Let us say sufferings can be disutilities, non-utilities in economic terms, or negative externalities. In the case of a polluting industry in the neighborhood of a country, in the neighborhood of a village or a city, that can, it is not a optimally minded project. It is not an optimal choice. It is not a correct choice. So corrupted mind, you can read it as that which is not a proper or scientifically, or taking into various factors, the context, the requirements, all that you have to read it that way. Then the result will follow this way badly. So in the next slide, the opposite is told. So if you do evil, what will happen to you with the mind? And if your mind is good, what will happen to you? Like the same thesis is continued, like Mano Pupangama Dhamma Mano Setta Manomaya. Manasesa prasannena. Prasannena means prasannamaina. That which is giving pleasure to you, that which is good to you, that which is giving happiness, that which is good in nature. If you have that good nature of mind and you speak something or do something, then like chaya, like the shadow which doesn't leave the person, doesn't depart the person, anapayini means that which is not deserting. The happiness will follow you like the shadow following a person when you have a good heart. Now this, see that one thing, if you have a negative thing, what will be the effect? What if you have a positive thing, what is the effect? This is called the twin versus, and exactly like our economic methodology. If it is increases, that will decrease, and if it decreases, that will increase like that. So this kind of one methodology we have, and the theory of mind in which is told here in these two stanzas is fabulous. It is on par with all the modern scientific things and modern scientific research in neurobiology, neurophysics, genetic research, all that. If this is so important, mind is so important, then how the mind has to be cultivated, how the mind has to be directed, and why the mind is important for a collective life. For that, this slide is a very important one. We all know that 6 men who are blind, it is applicable men with a open eyes. Let us take this, it is these 6 men are blind people, 6 men. They are touching the elephant, and one, depending upon which part they touch, they have an idea and they say that its trunk is a snake, that its leg is a tree, its tail is a rope, everybody is, and its body is a wall, and its ears are a fan. Everybody is telling what they perceive. This is exactly what Herbert Simon said about bounded rationality. Bounded rationality means whether you have an eyes or you have eyes that are capable of seeing or eyes not capable, we can come to it. We economists, we social scientists, we bureaucrats, we policy makers, we doctors, we engineers, we nurses, we all are sticking to our limited experience, limited knowledge base, and cognitive bias, our knowledge bias, our experiential bias, our situational bias. I lived in this Sai Baba colony. Therefore, the people in Sai Baba colony alone are good. I studied in agriculture university. Agriculture people alone are good. My community people, they alone good. My department is good. My country is good. This mentality of grasping and sticking to a particular view blocks us to know the global view. So once your mind is so prejudiced, so limited in grasping the reality, how do you expect that you can rationalize and take a behavior or decision that will be beneficial to the entire system? Or about yourself internally also, an individual making a choice of whether to become a doctor or to go for becoming a professor of economics, how does he know unless otherwise he knows about himself? So we are all making decisions in a bounded rational sphere. Bounded rationality of Simon is, you see, this is, I have written the reference, Tissa Sutta. This Tissa Sutta is there in the Diga Nikaya of the Pali Canon. This story of the 6 men and the elephant is told by Lord Buddha to one of the person who came and discussed about what is the nature of the earth, what is the nature of the God, whether God exists or not, whether this is good or not. So many questions which are not relevant or which are not immediately important for a happy life. When somebody asks, we are all sticking to certain ideological positions. Na? At that time, Lord Buddha has given this story that we don't know the reality, and also we don't know our limited capacity to cognize, still we stick to it. But at the same time, Lord Buddha did not stop with that. He made us to know the constraints. See, your capacity is finite intelligence, not infinite intelligence. Your capacity is scarce cognitive capacity, not unlimited cognitive capacity. Now, if I know how to file my tax returns, I will file, no. Why I will ask and pay some money to someone, so much money to file the tax returns or to fight the case? So our resources are limited, our cognitive resources are limited, not only, but they are also finite, bounded rationality. This once we realize the macroeconomists, the microeconomists who are believing in rational system of choice making, that in a perfect world of information, in a perfect competitive world, in a perfectly violence free, uncertainty free world, they are making a mathematical calculation, knowing the entire things in the world as if the alternative choices are available. They should realize the limitations of the human mind. And once they realize, then we can work out what best errors can be reduced and how best we can make a better choice. So this is what the point. Now let us link this slide and that slide. One side, Lord Buddha says that mind is everything. Mind is capable of doing everything, it alone directs. In another side, he says the limitations of our perspectives. He is not telling about the limitations of the mind. He is telling about the limitations of the perspectives of the mind. You don't want to reframe your frame of reference, you don't want to adjust. You don't want to relax the assumptions, conditions of your economic models. You don't want to relax the even in the face of experience and real life situations. You don't want to adjust your theory. You are still sticking to it. That is the problem. So when John Maynard Keynes was writing the general theory of money, interest and employment, in the introduction he writes, this book is not for the general reader. I can convince the general reader, but book is for an economist, from an economist. Because it is difficult to convince the economist. Why? He is already thinking that he is free from any philosophy, and therefore he can decide his own views, but he is already subscribing to a philosophy which is outdated. Therefore, to these philosophers who are not aware of their own status of mind, where they think that they are away from any influence of philosophy, but under the worst influence of a worst philosophy, to them I am writing this book of general theory of interest, money and employment. Because everybody in the world economic school were thinking that already full employment is existing. When there is Great Depression, When there is so much rate of unemployment, 12%, 25%, 30% of the people are unemployed, and the classical economists are like Pigot in the Oxford University, Cambridge and all, they are sitting and telling there is a demand problem only. We have to reduce the labor cost. We have to reduce the wages. Then the demand will be stimulated. The economy will come out of the depression. They are not recognizing that there is unemployment problem in the system. In the system, because you have defined the assumptions of the system in such a way that based on JB says law, that each supply will create its own demand. Then whatever is supplied already has been demanded. Where is the question of insufficient demand? Where is the lack of demand, lack of aggregate demand? Therefore, where is the question of unemployment? Because the economy is at its full capacity, at full employment. So you assume away the problem of underemployment, unemployment, which is starkly hitting at your face in reality, and still say that in the theory there is no possibility of unemployment coming. So, like I was saying in the earlier session, you have to throw this coat which is not fitting to your body. So you have to bring in real life economic situations, real life experience to economic theory, to the laboratory, and readjust the theory. That is what is meant here by Lord Buddha in the Tissa Sutta, in the Mahadiga society, in the Mahadiga or the Diga Nigaya collections. So whether we can say this situation of people having a limited perspective or sticking to their ideology is a comedy of errors or a tragedy of ignorance. Once we recognize that it is both, the implications of it, because as the implications of it is very clear. As a policy maker, as a tax, see in the window tax you all know, depending upon the number of windows you are having, size of windows, I will tax you. Then people started not having windows and they started ending up in having all kind of skin diseases. So the policy makers, the thinkers, the economists, any person who is studying the human behavior, what is the purpose? First to know how the system works. What is the nature of things? And secondly, how to use the knowledge to improve the living conditions. Betterment of the conditions of human being is the focus of economics or any other subject matter. All your social sciences, all your natural sciences, what are their ultimate aim? To make you less diseased or not diseased at all, so that your well-being can be increased, to make your longevity increase so that you will not die early, and to make you happy, and to make you not aging. So all the classical problems of what Lord Buddha was telling, Jara, Marana, Vyadi, Avastaya, the problem of suffering is recognized, and the causes of suffering are investigated. A positive methodology for eliminating that suffering was found out, and the result is declared. Yes, if you go and use this methodology, implement this methodology, there is happiness, there is end of sufferings. See the methodology of the Noble Four Truths. In your research methodology, you are following the same pattern. You are recognizing the problem, you are investigating into the causes of the problem. Let us say unemployment in water scarcity supply in Sirwani area, in Coimbatore. Why rent-seeking behavior has increased among the government officers? You are taking a problem. Why COVID has what are the unemployment consequences of COVID-19? You are taking up a problem. You are investigating it. And you are knowing the causes of it. Then you are proposing certain policy recommendations. And you believe that policy recommendations can lead to a better of situation. Like what Wilfredo Pareto was talking. all our welfare, the question of welfare economics, the questions of capabilities increasing, capabilities being as freedom, Now, cognitive, this Senthil Mullainathan of Harvard University, he is talking about if you are brought up in a poor economic conditions, your cognitive ability will be diminished or will be limited. It need not be, because varmai thiramaikku porvai alla, tadai alla. Your poverty need not be a hindrance or impediment for your growth or intellect, because intellect, beauty and capacity is nobody's monopoly, and it cannot be merely determined by the natural and given conditions of human beings. Exceptions are there, but still a better economic condition if you have, better is the scope of the child getting educated well. So cognitive abilities are affected if, depending upon your economic condition. The inner city crimes against the black boys and girls in New York, why they are forced into crimes and mostly they are all ending up in jails. Why? Because the policy decisions, the studies of human behavior is not based on correct perspective. That is why when Simon is talking about cognitive economics as a founding father of it, or Hayek and all, when they are talking of freedom of action, they are talking of economics should adopt rationality, not in the sense of calculating individuals, what I will get out of this situation, a self-seeking, a selfish approach. They are asking of rationality in the sense of problem solving and learning. Can we learn from our errors? Can we learn from the various people, collective community practice, so that we can together solve the problems of the society? So if you see, economics is now taking up happiness, well-being as the goal. Instead of saying development in the sense of expansion without a structural differentiation, without bringing about verifiable change in the living conditions of the people, what is the fun of development? So the criticism of all these development growth theories and development economics, welfare economics, all are basically methodological criticism. And methodology in social sciences, please believe me, is nothing but ideology. If you say that your data like Rory Sutherland says, it is psychology, not technology, that is now dictating the marketing principles. Similar is the case. It is not your technology, but it is your ideology. Your methodology in social science is nothing but your ideology. So today we are going for, in the cognitive economic sphere, very well said by Niall Kimball, one of the modern economists of cognitive economics. He says that now we are looking for the networking, the relationship economics, how we are interconnected, how the context in which our choice is revealed is important. When the gun is on my head, I will say, yes, this is the best government. He is the truth teller. He is the Raja Harichandra. I will tell. So the choice made by me under what conditions? You have taken all the conditions and kept under that murderous assumption called ceteris paribus. And you never visited it back. In that black box, everything which is mattering for the life has been put in it. Stephen Leacock is one important short story writer. He goes to a photographer to take a picture of himself. The photographer says, "Yeah, your hairstyle is not good. You make it like this." And then he says, "You are wearing a specs, remove it. You are wearing a coat, it is not looking nice, remove it. This, that, your mustache is not nice, remove it." Finally, Stephen Leacock went to take a picture of himself, ended up taking a picture which is not at all of himself. Then he walks away rejecting that kind of photographer. The point is that we have to address ourselves to the problem of life itself And that is where Buddhist rationality and Buddhist economic principles of right livelihood. Lord Buddha, among various things, out of that eightfold path, he says right livelihood. Traditional economics talks of how to maximize consumption, but Lord Buddha will say whether that consumption is good for your happiness, is it good for your health, that you see. Now, if you say this in the old regime, hey, some old grandma has come to teach us. But now the value of grandma has increased, because now your problem has, you are now having a single mother, you are having a problem of how to bring up your child, so now you want your grandmother. The neoclassical economics, the classical economics, it has failed to address the problems of the society, the world, the globe. Therefore, they are now going back to cognitive economics, mind-based research, all that. Now, the need to go back to the doctor has come. When Lord Buddha says, there is one interesting theory, which is the fundamental theory in Buddhism, that is called Pratitya Samutpada. Pratitya Samutpada says, everything is produced in the given conditions and causes. No single person is capable of producing, no single factory is capable of producing anything in the absence of the supporting conditions and causes. Therefore, it says it is not a production, it is a co-production. Conditioned co-production. Pratitya Samutpada. Conditioned co-production, I used to very jocularly, I used to tell, to explain that theory to many of my friends. We say when the child is born, it is reproduction. No, child is not an act of reproduction, but an act of co-production. Viable male should be there, viable female should be there, the conditions of fertility, things like that should, all the causes and conditions should satisfy. Then only the child is born. The X chromosome or Y chromosome for the father or mother has to come and combine. Then alone it will be, we can have a child. So it is not a reproduction, it is a co-production. And every such thing is, Lord Buddha says in Pratitya Samutpada, interconnected. We are not human beings, we are interbeings. We are interdependent beings. We are not independent beings. When you are independent, you are no being. And Lord Buddha starts with the principle of ignorance. We are, to start with, we are not knowing the reality. We don't know what are the behavior parameters, preference parameters, choice parameters, conditions, situations. Therefore, we have to study it. Become enlightened, progressively enlightened. Progressively enlightened means progressively getting rid of our errors, going for trial, going for experimenting, going for experiencing, then we are arriving at the truth. When you are coming out of the closet of your own comfort zone, your own self-feeling, egoistic status that I am knowing everything, then you are capable of experiencing, seeing the reality on the other side. Last time when I was giving a lecture in the Department of Sociology, our colleague and very good friend of our Dean Bhupati ji and myself, Dr. Suresh Babu, I was talking about Karl Mannheim and Clifford Geertz. Clifford Geertz, he is known for his great contribution for the interpretive turn in the social sciences, semiotic approach to social sciences, and it has come to economics also. So in that he says the purpose of a social scientist is not to deduce, identify the mathematical precise mathematical laws from the universe about human behavior, because they are not existing. What is applicable? Suppose I go and make a research of a particular tribe in Africa, my knowledge is limited to that local only. How it, from that I can project a model of universal pattern of behavior of each and everyone? So uniformity, which is imposed by the limitations of the tools that we have taken, is not acceptable. Therefore, Clifford Geertz says that we have to bring the opinion of the people who are tending their sheep on the other side of the valley to the table of discussion of mankind. The global knowledge, the knowledge of your Bharatiya University has to be the problem of Tamil Nadu, the problem of India, the problem of irrational structures of stratification, and how it is keeping away thousands and millions of people from engaging themselves in making their life better off, is all to be brought to the knowledge of the entire world. And you have to take lessons. If this fourfold division of Varna system, which was existing in France and in Japan, they got destroyed, they were abolished. Why it is not being abolished in India? Why, if China could get rid of its caste system, which was far more rigid than your caste system, why are you not getting rid of it? If France can get rid of its caste system, which is called the vassalage system, why are you not? Ancient regime they call it. So, we have to see how capabilities, how the human freedom, all that can be expanded by getting rid of irrational structures. And once you know, it is not that you are alone capable and you are alone independently living. So 90% of the people's problems are not material to you. You are not recognizing the role that they play in enhancing your happiness. Today, we make a choice whether to listen to that music or go and eat this pizza or be in that place for holiday holidaying, or should we drive our Audi car in OMR of Chennai. All that is enjoyable to you because those who are deprived of the opportunities are not blocking your way. Suppose the non-Audi owners decided that we will not allow you to drive your Audi car, where you will go and drive your car. So, the positive externality that is coming from the people by way of not taking any action against you itself is a contribution of them for our increased happiness or for so-called betterment of us. Therefore, we have to see the interconnected pratitya samutpada nature of our relationship with each and everything that is available to us, or we are not capable of seeing them. That also we have to see. So the concept of rationality in Buddhism, as propounded by Dr. Ambedkar in Buddha and his Dhamma, you see it. And the effect of it in terms of positive externalities, in terms of releasing efficiency, improving social efficiency, enhancing the wealth of the nations. 90% of the people are not educated, not allowed to pursue the choice profession of their own liking. Then how your goods and production will increase in the country? Wealth of nation is nothing but GDP. 90% of the people cannot have access to the profession of their own choice. They cannot shift their jobs. They cannot get trained properly. Then how you are going to increase GDP? How are you going to have more varieties of choices of things that you can enjoy? Therefore, we have to see that today the economic principles of Buddhism, that coexistence, if there is no coexistence, there is no existence, has to be appreciated. We are all interconnected beings. We are not independent beings, we are interdependent beings. That's why the great Vietnamese monk who Thai Nhat Hanh says that we are interbeing. So once we know the Buddhist principles, then the first Western author who wrote about Buddhist economics is that Sumichar. Small is beautiful, as if economics as if people mattered. In that book, he talks of the right livelihood, the right consumption, the right way of living, the right feelings, the right values that are being emphasized by Buddhism. Not for the sake of power, not for the sake of showing off our our wealth and pelf. As Veblen will be saying, in Veblen, the affluent society, Thorsten Veblen says, demonstrative effect. My neighbor is having a car, therefore Audi car, therefore I should go for limousine. This is demonstrative effect. You are in a competitive consumption era, and that leads to ecological destruction, social tensions, economic wastages, and things like that. Therefore, Sumichar is telling that we have to go for the Buddhist way of economics. The Buddhist individual is a collective individual, unlike the autonomous individual in the classical economics, in the Western economics. The Western economist has conceived an individual who is independent, who is socially irresponsible, and who has nothing to take from the society, and he has nothing to pay back to the society. That is the view that they have about the conception of individual in the Western context. Here it is very cold now in Assam. That's why I got stuck with cold. Please excuse me for that. So, but in the case of Buddhism, the individual is always embedded in the social context. In the social context, how he is and what is he or she, that matters. And the principles of Pratitya Samutpada, the principles of mind, that's why they focused on the mind. Because we all are gathered here united by the mind that we should attend a lecture on, we should engage in an interaction on a certain branch of knowledge called cognitive economics. Mind united us. Otherwise, we would not have been here. So, therefore, the focus on mind and the natural processes of mind, what are all influencing the mind. Like one instance where people, when they go to particularly males, when they urinate in the urinals, they don't urinate in the that urinal given. They will spill over outside. Therefore, there was lot of problem in Britain regarding maintaining the cleanliness. So they have invented a small idea. They printed the fly in the urinal. So 80% of the area got cleaned because of this one. Because they think, psychologically he thinks that there is a fly in it, so it has to be washed off, flushed out. So why they are saying, so your mind, your attitude, suppose now we put Sai Baba painting in some walls in near Lali Road. Will people go and urinate there? So you have to make use of the belief system, you have to make use of the value system, you have to make use of the mental processes so that a better society can be created. A better working of the economy or society is possible. This is what is the purpose of economics. Cognitive economics is coming with these tools. And Buddhism comes with the idea of greater number of people's happiness. Bahujan Sukhaya, Bahujan Hitaya. Now today a particular political party is having that slogan. It doesn't mean that the original context in which Lord Buddha has said cannot be lost sight of. So he says a large number of people's happiness. So cognitive economics talking about individual heterogeneity, not uniformity, but individual heterogeneity. You may like coffee, he may like idli, he may like his child not to get married but to go for higher studies, he may want his wife to work in the office, or she may want to go for foreign studies or do agriculture. So allowing the individuals, studying the mind of the individuals, providing opportunities for cultivation of the mind, actualizing the mind, and in enhancing the human personality, enhancing the human happiness, as the happiness index propounded by the Royal Bhutan government. So you see how today the original concept of happiness and the liberation of the mind, that is the central subject matter of Buddhism, is now being rediscovered through the various cognitive researches taken by in the economic field and as well as in the other spheres in the Western science. Now, Western science, Western society is in atrophy, as Emily Durkheim said. It is in atrophy. It is petering out. It is now today a kind of deranged individual, deranged society it is. Schizophrenia is the characterizing norm of the Western society. They are now looking for where we can get value, where they can look for peace. And that peace, the happiness, that satisfaction, self-reported happiness studies are now being conducted in the cognitive sphere of economics in Western universities. Whether you are satisfied with this or not, how do you feel when you had a smile from the neighbor when you see them in the lift? When somebody compliments on the color of your saree or about your dress or specs, things like that. So people are now going for innumerous tiny instances of ordinary instances of life and take up them and see whether it is matching with the happiness index, whether it is happy, whether it is contributing to your welfare, whether it is leading to your own peace, joy, neighborhood, mutual interaction, communication. These, what are the subject matter of religion, so-called religion, have been now taken over by economics because of the crisis that has been faced in theory by economics as a discipline to handle the real lifetime problems. And also the real time problems are so huge that, like we say in history is too big a subject to be left to the historian alone. Like our patient is too an important person to be left alone to the decisions of the doctor. So we have our own stakes in it. And Buddhism comes with this kind of concepts of happiness, peace, internal value, and right livelihood, all that. And it places importance on attitude formation, on right cultivation of mindset, things like that. With this understanding of Buddhist psychology and the emphasis that is given by Buddhism to psychology, there are various schools of Buddhism. Like Alaya Vijnana school is there, Mahayana school is there, and no mind school of philosophy is there. One hand cannot slap, one hand cannot clap. School of Buddhism is there. One hand cannot clap. In Tamil we say oru kai vasa elupadu. That is a philosophy in Tibetan Buddhism, which talks of we need two hands to make a clap. That means we need interdependence, we need coexistence, we need so many factors to come together and play. Therefore, the individual who is standing alone, away from the society, and who knows everything about society or about himself, that is an outdated model. The Atma model of Western society, that the individual is self-sufficient, the individual is capable of everything and doesn't need the interaction with the society. All that Atma model, which I call, of the Western society is totally outdated. Now we have to go for an enlightenment model for the society. We have to accept our ignorance. Avicchya panchaya vijnana. We are in the beginning ignorant. From there, enlightenment is possible. Enlightenment is possible when you are ready to get rid of your prejudice or open the box inside your mind and see what you have kept in it. Because over a period of 30 years, 40 years, we are all now 40 plus, or we are all, having so much of baggage received from various people. It is time to introspect and go internal and see the mind box, what are the things there in it. And I definitely can say to you that if you study the Western neurophysics or biometric studies or neurometric studies, neuroeconomic studies or cognitive economic studies, behavioral economic studies, all that modern information will really help you to appreciate the contributions of Buddhism, to understand how it is addressing the problems of human suffering and is providing a solution to end human sufferings and create a happiness for the individuals and for the global level and as a humanity as a whole and to the ecology. The relevance of Buddhism for ecological things and all are very much there in that pioneering article of Sumechar, where he has discussed about the propensity of a person being not going for violent a means of living, because he is capable of taking care of his own local needs. Therefore, there is no need for going for a large scale elimination of trees and ecosystems, water bodies, things like that. The Western industrialization model has gone overboard and gone in a way like a reckless driving, like a train in its own path, and it has not bothered to take into account various factors that are relevant for we as a humanity as a whole should engage ourselves with. So Buddhism, on the other hand, unlike the train which is going on its trail track model, it wants you to drive the car amid the traffic in the roads of your RS from something like that, where your driving of your car is among all other vehicles, and you have to at every moment negotiate your space in response and along with the various other people who are driving their vehicles in the direction. So Buddhism says you have to think along with the society and against the society when it is required, like I was telling, irrational structures like caste system, like dominations and all the things have to be re-questioned, whether it is contributing to human freedom, human happiness, all or not. Because ultimately, be it economics or any social science, the intellectual's job is to play the role of the whistleblower of the society. Dr. Ambedkar says the difference between an educated person and an intellectual is that the educated person wants to get his job and wants to lead his life by being a technician in his own field. He has no social conscience. He has no botheration about what is going on in the society. On the other hand, an intellectual is a person who uses the knowledge of the subject in which he is an expert and makes a cognitive effort to understand how best his knowledge can be useful to the society and how best he can contribute to alleviate the problems of society. So, the same concept of public intellectual has also been talked about. Edward Said, the representation of intellectuals, in that book, like a series of lectures which he has delivered in the BBC lecture series, he says that an intellectual is a person who is having the guts, courage, power, consciousness to speak to the people who are in power and authority. If as a commissioner I can't tell what is going on wrong to my own seniors, then to that extent I have failed in my role and I have reduced my capacity as a technician, a cog in the wheel and not a public intellectual. Karl Mannheim says a routine order, a routine decision done by people is not what is called for. You have to go for a radical politics of science, he calls for. Emily Durkheim, Max Weber, you all see, they are all asking for society to be alert of itself. It has to rejuvenate itself. It has to reinvent itself. It has to shake off its own shoulders and introspect and see whether their theoretical tools as sociologists, as economists, because economics has a prime place in the realm of social sciences, you have now an additional responsibility to play the role of a public intellectual. And that public intellectual role first has been advocated in the history by Lord Buddha. He alone said, please leave your prejudice, your own attachments, your own going after goods and services, come for the welfare of many, for the happiness of many. That call has been given by him to to the entire world, and we have Tamil Nadu and all, we have contributed great intellectuals like Dhammakirti, Bodhidharma, Buddhamitra, Aswaghosa, Dhammagosa, like there are so many people are there. So now to sum up my presentation from the Buddhist perspective, how cognitive economics is faring in our judgment, in our evaluation is that, unlike in Indian context, we say Pushpaka Viman is there in Purana, therefore already aircraft has been invented by us. No, this kind of bluffing is not done by cognitive economists or Western economists or scientists. When it comes to Buddhism, they see the effect of Buddhist studies in the societies where it is a living faith. Like they see China, they see Thailand, they see the South Asian countries, and they see how the Buddhist principles, Zen Buddhism in Japan, how it has actually guided their behavior as a society. Today they are all far more better off economies. Their happiness index is far more better. Their crime rates are far more lesser than what is there in the Western countries or in India. The women's liberation is far more greater in Burma, in China, or in Sri Lanka, even you take the immediate country. So the value system is now coming back to economics once again, which was earlier discarded by the mathematically obsessed school of thought of economics that went after the models of Newtonian physics or Darwinian physics. Now, we will benefit by because we are all Indians, and once upon a time we are all Buddhist by historical terms. Even Afghanistan, they are all historically they are Buddhist only. At a later period in society, they have become Muslim Islamic faith walas. No problem. Because we have a better product to sell in the market to the Western society or to the Eastern society, because Buddhism has indulged in a scientific, rational manner into the mind of the human beings, and it came up with certain wonderful insights. It came up with certain solutions, with certain theoretical methodologies and constructs, which you can benefit, and you can also contribute in that field if you also could divert a little bit of your attention in that field. There is so much to reap in that field of Buddhism if you go with your so much of rich expertise of being an economist in the field. You will be able to appreciate far more in a very subtle and wonderful way than what many other foreign economists can understand about Buddhist contribution to the human problem of understanding human behavior and addressing the human suffering and proposing a solution for human happiness and well-being. That is why some 19 years ago, when I came to Bardhajan University, I told that Buddhism is a philosophy of happiness. Today, cognitive economics is called. 20 years ago, I told. Before this, all Milley, Camille Bell, and many other Western economists have come up in the theory. Even Rory Sutherland, who is an Austrian economist, very popular in YouTube. Before all these guys could talk about economics and cognitive economics as a branch of social, as a science of, as a system of happiness, I have told and declared in your Bardhajan University that Buddhism is a philosophy of happiness. I think I have given lecture to economists only at that time also, and I said it is an economics of happiness also. It is not merely an economics of mind, it is also an economics of happiness. And with that perspective, if we could see the theoretical tools and insights provided by Buddhism, it would be better for all of us, because we may be in a position to give an insider view to the Western world as well as to the world of China and Japan who have got Buddhism from us. With these few words, I would profusely would like to thank all of you for showing lot of patience to hear me out, and maybe maybe in my presentation there are so many things to be taken into a retrospection as to how how best I have presented, but errors are mine, happiness should be yours. And I thank you, I thank you, Professor and Dean of Arts, a distinguished friend, for giving me opportunity. Thank you, sir.
प्रेजेंटेशन किया और अच्छी गाना भी गाया, बहुत अच्छा था.
Thank you. Now I am open for discussion, Dean of Arts. Yeah.
Yes, sir, yes. So, dear participant, if you have any queries, doubt, please rise.
Hello, sir. Very good presentation, very thought-provoking.
Yes.
One thing is, too much reading of mind is also not good. It will lead to problems.
So that's why Buddha says meditate and cool the mind.
Yes, sir, absolutely right, sir. He is a wide reader. We understand, no?
Professor, what is your name? Gurukula, he has made a...
Prakash, Dr. Prakash from...
Now I could see the prakash of his teeth. It is so bright. Thanks to... So, what he says in a lighter way, in too much of reading of the mind is not good. In the sense he wants to say, mind alone doesn't matter. That is the idea of Lord Buddha also. That is why he said, the ultimate aim of nirvana is to go to the state of no mind. That is...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is how you will explain. Now all of us have maintained an immense silence. That is called noble silence. And there is a book on the silence in Buddhism. Vimalakirti's thunderous silence. Vimalakirti Sutra. Kindly read that book. It would be revealing to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
थैंक यू प्रोफेसर प्रकाश जी, हाँ फॉर योर कमेंट्स. हाँ, किसी ने हिंदी में बात किया? कौन है भाई साहब हिंदी में बात किया?
जी मैं हूँ, मैं डॉक्टर विंसेंट जयकुमार विवेकानंद कॉलेज में असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर हूँ.
फ्रॉम मुंबई. ओह ग्रेट. चेन्नई. अच्छा.
चेन्नई में. मैं तो तमिल में बात करने वाला ही है.
बात कीजिए.